Welcome to the latest episode of the Real Women, Real Business podcast with myself, your host, Shauna Lynn Simon. And listen, in the last episode, I talked about crafting your vision and setting some goals. And today we're going to dive into how to achieve those goals. So listen, ladies, if you have not listened to the previous episode yet, I suggest stopping this one right now. Take a moment, go back, listen to it. It's important that you are super clear on where you want to go before you start trying to dive into taking action. And today we're all about the action. So on the last episode, I just want to recap one thing that I talked about, which was the accidental CEO. This is something I am all too familiar with. So in short, an accidental CEO is someone who followed a passion. They saw a need in the world that they set out to fulfill. And while maybe you knew you were starting a company, you didn't necessarily realize what all was going to be involved in running an actual business. And so you didn't necessarily give a whole lot of thought to like, what would it actually look like to operate a business? So if you've ever found yourself thinking like, wait a minute, I started a business, not a 24/7 stress machine, stick with me. I'm going to be your guide to combating burnout and help you to build that business of your dreams. We all know it's not going to be a straight line, and some days are going to be easier than others. But I'm going to cover some strategies and tips that will help you to achieve your goals. First, though, I want to talk about getting motivated to work on things. Let's talk a little bit about motivation, what it is, and how to get it. There's a secret about motivation. Actually, it's not really a secret. Here's what you need to understand about motivation. Discipline leads to motivation. Okay, so discipline yields motivation. Motivation yields action. Action, of course, yields results. Let me say that one more time. So discipline is how you get your motivation. Motivation is how you get your action, and your action is how you get your results. A lot of people think that motivation is the number one step, but that's just not true. The bottom line is I want you to stop waiting to feel motivated to do things. You need to create plans, set expectations, set yourself up with the routines that you need so that you can create your motivation and take action. So let's go back to that first step of discipline. I am a big fan of setting up rules for yourself. I want you to ask yourself if there are any rules that you have. And these are like those unbreakable rules that like you abide by these pretty much no matter what. For example, right now I have a rule that I'm not allowed to buy any more tea. I am an avid tea drinker and I have a ridiculous number of teas in my house. So I have this cabinet that's full of tea, but I recently went through and realized I'd stashed tea in various other areas because my cabinet couldn't support all the tea that I had. So I've done a massive reorganization of it. And my goal is to work through and get rid of some of these. By get rid of them, I mean drink them, obviously. But I'm going to work through some of these teas. And so once I've got it to a more manageable quantity, then I'm allowed to start buying tea again. So this is a rule that I have for myself. When I tell people I'm not allowed to buy tea, they think it's kind of funny. Like, well, who made that rule? Well, I made that rule. And that might seem silly that you're going to put so much stock into a rule that you've created for yourself. But let me be honest, I'm more likely to follow my own rules than I am somebody else's, right? So there's many reasons to have rules. So it might be about bettering your health, for example, or increasing your productivity. Perhaps you want to be a better wife, mother, sister, friend, whatever. Rules and discipline help us to grow and thrive, and they are present for us when motivation is not there. So if you want to build a sustainable business without working like 70, 80 plus hour work weeks, burning the candle at both ends, if you haven't listened to the very first episode of this podcast, please go back to episode number 1 where I share my story and my experience with burnout. So listen, if you don't want to be burning the candle at both ends and sending your body into an overstressed ticking time bomb, then developing some rules and discipline and some healthy habits is a great place to start. So I'll dive into habit building on a future episode, but please know that habits do take time to develop. So start yourself off small and go easy on yourself if you don't get things perfect the first time. I know I've got a lot of cats. Let's just be real. I've got a lot of cats in this household. And every once in a while, a cat needs to change their care routine and that they need some medication. But what do I do when I first need to start remembering to give them those meds? I'm going to set an alarm for it, right? So I'm going to have an alarm go off at say 8 a.m. or 5 p.m. or whatever that timing is to say, hey, give Abby her heart medication, for example, a real thing that I actually do twice a day. I don't need that alarm to go off anymore. I don't need that reminder because it's now been built into my muscle memory. And to be perfectly honest, Abby reminds me when it's meds time because she really likes the treat that she gets with it. But the point is that when I'm building that habit, I'm going to miss the odd dose and I'm going to set up triggers for myself to ensure that I stick with it. So if you're building a new habit, make sure you go easy on yourself if you're not getting it perfect every single day, but work towards making it a solid part of your routine. Okay. So let's go back to some of these personal rules. I thought I'd share a few of my rules with you to kind of get you started, get the juices flowing in your brain a little bit. And I want you to sort of understand some of the reasoning behind some of these. So one of the things that I have as a rule for myself is to consume knowledge daily. And this might mean maybe one day I'm going to really focus on current events and get myself up to date. I'll be honest, I don't watch a lot of news. I don't spend a lot of time engrossed in news articles. So it is easy for me to find myself a little bit out of touch sometimes with the daily happenings. So I try to consume at least a news brief on a daily basis, but I might spend some time every once in a while saying, I'm going to dig a little bit deeper to really catch myself up on some things. Another rule that I have for myself is I don't lie. I mean, that's just a good rule to have. Does it mean that I always tell the complete story? Maybe not necessarily, because that may not be needed for all purposes. But at the very end of the day, I do try to lead a very honest and integral lifestyle where, I'm leading with integrity. So I don't lie. Now let's talk about health and wellness. I work out at minimum 4 times a week. My goal is actually 5 times a week. But my rule for myself on an average week is 4 times per week, trying to get that in so I can allow myself a little forgiveness if I don't always make it to the full 5. Now, there are some exceptions to rules such as holidays. I'll be honest, a lot of my rules go out the window when I'm on holidays, but I try not to completely abandon them. Another rule that goes out the window on holidays, but is one that I have in everyday life, is no drinking on weekdays. So unless it's a holiday and I'm not working the next day, I will not consume any alcohol. And here's the thing. Let me dive into this one a little bit more because I get a lot of questions about this. But I will say this is by far one of the best rules that I made for myself. And here's the really cool thing about rules too, is if you are talking to someone and they ask you to, let's say you've decided to give up gluten because it's not good on your body or you're having some health issues or whatever. If you tell people, well, I have a rule that I don't eat any gluten, they're not going to question you, right? We've kind of gotten to the point where I think in society, if we're telling people that we don't do something, that they're not really going to push you too hard on it. So if I tell people that I don't feel like having a glass of wine tonight, they might try to twist my arm into it. But if I simply say, oh, no, thank you, I don't drink on Tuesdays, I don't drink during the week, no one's questioning that. No one's pushing me to do it. So let me tell you a bit about the reasoning why. And please understand, there is zero judgment behind this. If you are drinking a glass of wine on a Tuesday night because you've had a rough day, I get it. The kids are going crazy. Maybe the husband's driving you absolutely mad. Maybe your wife has done something that you don't necessarily agree, or has disciplined the kids in a way that you don't necessarily agree with. Whatever that looks like for you, whatever your life looks like, if you decide that you want to have some alcohol at the end of the day to calm your nerves, by no means is this a judgment at all. But I wanted to explain some of the science behind why I made this decision for myself. Again, go back to the first episode and learn a little bit about my story with burnout. But what I did explain in that was that I was diagnosed with adrenal fatigue. And this meant that I had very low energies. So I was practicing things that any sort of discipline and rules that would allow me to have as much energy as possible. I really needed to make sure that I was preserving my energies and not compromising that. So I know that if I have a glass of wine tonight, I will feel sluggish tomorrow. And this is not just something that's in my head, though. This is a scientific fact. So alcohol is actually a poison in your body. Again, not a judgment thing. This is a science thing. It's considered a poison. Your body does not want it in its inside. So when you drink it, your body begins to actively try to process it. So the enzymes in your liver are working to metabolize it, but It's a fairly slow process, and therefore the alcohol continues to circulate through your body. What usually ends up happening is you will wake up partway through the night as that alcohol finally begins to leave your system. So a lot of people think about like, oh, I want that glass of wine because I want to be able to fall asleep, and it's what helps me sleep. Sure, it might help you to fall asleep, but you will not get as restful of a sleep. If you've ever had a night of drinking and the next morning you're super tired and thinking, well, I stayed in bed for like 8 hours. Why am I so tired? It's because your body doesn't actually get the opportunity to shut down the way that it needs to get that restful sleep. So I know if I want to be productive tomorrow, I want to ensure that I'm getting a good night's sleep tonight. And therefore, I have a rule for myself that I only drink on the weekend. And in case you're wondering, I've got a few different drinks of choice. I do love a glass of wine, but my go-to tends to be a little bit more liquor related. I love myself a good Southern Comfort on the rocks or Southern Comfort Manhattan. Southern Comfort is definitely one of my top drinks, and I've been consuming it for more years than I care to admit, but it's kind of been one of my number one choices for a while. I also enjoy and appreciate a really good scotch. So there's a little bit of insight for me. Anyway, let's get back to these rules. So what rules are you setting up for yourself? I often hear people say that they're so busy during the day working on client projects, maybe, or dealing with some of the day-to-day operations of things. Maybe they've got client calls or emails or whatever, that they don't really get much time to work on the business. So then what they do is they try to work on it in the evenings. They say, I usually spend some time, if I feel up to it after I have dinner, I'll often spend some time working on the business. But I think we know how well that actually goes. If you're saying to yourself, if I feel like it tonight, I'm going to work on my business, do you think it's really going to happen? Majority of the time, probably not. Like, which do you think is more likely to produce better results? I'll work on my business tonight if I'm feeling motivated, or I work on my business every Monday morning. And therefore, I have a rule that I don't make appointments for Mondays. Which one do you think is going to yield better results? So what this does when you have these rules is, let's say someone is only available to meet you on a Monday morning. You have to now evaluate whether or not saying yes to that opportunity, to that appointment, is worth you compromising a hard and fast rule that you have. And by allowing yourself that sort of filter, you will find that you will prioritize and protect that time that you've blocked off for working on your business that much more. Let's use working out or exercising as another example. I work out, like I said, every day, usually 5 times a week, but sometimes only 4, depending on some appointments that I have. But for the most part, most weeks, it's 5 times a week. And I work out at 6 a.m. Do you think that works better? Or do you think I should just say, I'll work out when I feel motivated? Because let's face it, if I'm going to decide each morning if I feel like working out, how many of those mornings do you think I'm actually getting my butt out of bed and doing it? The reality is that because it's something that is a hard and fast rule for me, there's really no alternative in my head. So I wake up in the morning, I'm going to go and work out. And I have a certain routine as well that allows for more accountability. This is a whole conversation for another day, but at least 3 times a week, I'm working out with a partner. So I'm either going for a run or I've got my boxing class, my sparring. So I've got certain things where people are counting on me to show up at a specific time in a specific location. However, that doesn't necessarily mean that I'm always going to show up if I don't have it as a rule that I'm going to. So, and on those days that I don't have an accountability partner, I'm still getting in my workout at 6 a.m. And, some days it's especially hard for us to feel motivated, to get the motivation that we need to get going on things. Maybe you've just found out that a big proposal that you did was rejected, or something else has kind of come up to derail your day a little bit. Those are the days that it's the hardest to keep going and to really feel motivated. So that's where your discipline comes in, right? So when I was dealing with the adrenal fatigue, one of the big things that we did was we had to experiment with a lot of different things to figure out what would work to heal my body. We dealt with a lot of food restrictions. So we stripped a lot of things out in order to reintroduce them gradually because my body was just so depleted. And so there was various food restrictions, supplements, different routines that we were trying, and all trying to figure out what worked. I was so committed to this each and every day. because I knew that I had made a decision basically that I was going to do whatever it took to heal myself. And only if I exhausted every possibility out there would I give up. And let's face it, there's always another possibility to explore. So I was not prepared to give up. So I had to really give it my all. If I had to feel motivated to follow the restrictions, to take my supplements, chances are I would not be where I am today. You can't just sort of pick and choose when you're going to feel motivated to do things. You've got to have that discipline there. I will say that another lesson from all the things that I tried and all the various things that we did in order to get me onto this path to health was that I also didn't let failure deter me, because everything that we tried was something that we ruled out essentially. So I looked at it that way. It got us one step closer to finding something that would work by eliminating something that didn't work. So I kind of looked at it sort of like the Edison approach, as they say. You know, Thomas Edison is famous for saying that he didn't fail 10,000 times. He simply found 10,000 ways to not make the light bulb. So each method that didn't work brought me closer to one that would. Anyway, I'm digressing a little bit here, but I hope you're finding some inspiration, motivation from this, because again, motivation comes actually more from discipline than it does from inspiration. So think about what it is that you want to be better at. What do you want to improve in your life? And what rules would help you to achieve that? So for myself, like I said, I want to have enough energy to take on the world every day. So this means not drinking the evening before. Perhaps you want to create a rule around your spending habits, or limiting screen time, or finding time to learn new skills. Maybe you want to have a rule for finding peace before you fall asleep at night so that you're waking up nice and refreshed. So maybe that's journaling or meditating or going for a walk before you go to bed. Again, I'm not here to tell you what your rules should be, but I want you to look at what the outcomes are that you want to achieve, and then start setting up some of those personal rules for yourself. Okay, so now that we have our motivation sorted out by creating some of these personal rules, let's go back to achieving the goals that we outlined in the last episode. So in the last episode, I introduced the idea of SMART goals. If you're not familiar with this, SMART, S-M-A-R-T, is an acronym that stands for specific, measurable, achievable, or as I like to say, actionable, relevant, and time bound. So having SMART goals helps to provide that clarity and focus on your goals, and makes your next steps that much easier. It's a lot easier to know what actions and opportunities to pursue and which ones to turn down when you have very specific goals outlined. So let's break them down a little bit. So specific, the S of SMART, specific. You want to be answering the questions of, what is it that I want to achieve with this goal? Why is this important? Who's going to be involved? Where is it going to happen? What resources do I need for it? Really hammer out some of those details. And even if you don't have all the answers yet, at least identify what additional questions need to be answered. Okay. Next, measurable, the M, measurable. This is when you're going to be answering the question of, how will I know that I've accomplished my goal? Every goal should be measurable in some way. Achievable or actionable. Is the goal achievable with the resources that I have available? What are the actions that need to be taken in order to achieve this? And then relevant. So does this goal align with my broader objectives? Take a look at those goals that you have outlined for 2-3 years from now. Think about the overall values and culture of the company. Does this goal align with all of that? And then time bound. When will the goal be achieved? So it's always good if we can put some times to things. Anytime anyone's going on a fitness type of journey, they've usually got a goal of a certain amount of weight that they want to lose, or a certain outfit that they want to fit into. And they've usually attached a timeline to it. Sometimes we create those timelines based on an upcoming vacation or holiday that we want to be ready for. And other times it's a bit more arbitrary than that. It could be based on changing seasons, or it could simply just be based on what a realistic timeline feels like in your mind. So any goal that we're setting for ourselves, we want to ensure that we have a timeline to it. So let's take an actual example of a SMART goal. Let's say that your goal is to increase your website traffic. let's be specific about this now. So we're going to increase our monthly website traffic by 30% within the next 6 months. So measurable. How are we going to measure this? Well, we can track the website traffic using Google Analytics, great tool for that. And we can measure what the current monthly average is and then monitor our progress until we get to that 30% increase. Achievable. So let's conduct an analysis of the current marketing strategies that we have and see if what we're doing currently will allow us to reach that, or are there areas that we should be revamping and improving on? Perhaps you want to take a look at your SEO, doing some optimization there. Maybe you want to increase your content marketing and social media promotions, all to drive towards this growth. Are relevant. Increasing website traffic aligns with the company's broader goal of, let's say, expanding online presence and reach a larger audience, or simply increasing revenues. And in order to increase revenues, you need to generate more leads. Time bound. So we've already set the deadline of 6 months for this to achieve that 30% increase in website traffic. So we've got a clear timeline, and we're going to monitor our progress and evaluate the effectiveness of the various strategies that we're implementing. So this is a great exercise to help you to ensure that you are working on the best tasks every day to bring you closer to your short-term and long-term goals. If you know exactly what those goals are and what actions you need to take for them, take a look at the tasks that you are doing that are not bringing you any closer to these ones, that are in fact taking you away from them. Can some of those tasks be delegated? Can some of them be eliminated altogether, or simply pushed out to a later date? So if you feel like you've been spinning your wheels, you're feeling stuck, this exercise will rejuvenate you. It's a great reminder of why you got started and will help to put you back on track of meeting the needs of your core audience. So let's sum up some of the takeaways from this episode. Number one, secret to motivation is discipline. It's not really that big of a secret, is it? And discipline means creating rules and routines to assist with your motivation. And of course, SMART goals are the types of goals that we want to work towards. So SMART is an acronym that stands for specific, measurable, achievable, or actionable, relevant, and time bound. So what is one thing that you can get started on right now? Well, I suggest deciding on some disciplined habits that you're going to start incorporating into your routine. So take a look at what it is that you hope to accomplish, then review what disciplines or habits or exercises you can do to help you to achieve that. So listen, if what I'm saying here resonates with you, then I hope you'll tune in again next week and allow me to continue to be a part of your journey. In the meantime, I've got some fantastic resources for you. You can check out all the episodes if you go to aboutshaunalynn.com/podcast. Check out the link in our show notes and be sure to subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts. Until next time, everyone, this is Shauna Lynn Simon from the Real Women, Real Business podcast. See ya.